Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. FPL Vincenzo here, and we are preparing for FPL Game Week 30. In the last couple of days, obviously there's been some FA Cup results, European football results that have helped sort of make it easier to shape decisions for the future. And for me, that's obviously making plans around how to use my chips. I did a chip pod a couple of weeks ago. So I thought I'd do a little bit of an update now, but with a clearer focus on the bench boost. Because at that point, when I potted a few weeks ago, I was looking to play my bench boost in game week 29. That didn't happen. Harry Wilson getting injured, uncertainties around Joachim Andersen, Erling Haaland. So I've still got that to fit in, so that my plans from that pod need to change. And I think it's quite a good talking point now for people, because I think lots of people are fixated on playing the bench boost in the expected big double in game week 33. And I think there's a bigger realization in the community now that maybe that isn't the optimal strategy, and more people are looking at other alternatives. So the focus of this will be primarily leading with the bench boost. We'll then obviously go into the other chips and what my current thoughts are for my team, etc., etc. So if we start, I just wanted to sort of bring up these two game weeks. Game week 25 was quite a big game week for me because I made 3 moves. And for the first time in a while, I'd put myself into a team that had a full bench. Up until then, I had Mark Gui from Chelsea up front, never played a minute. The bench boost was never really feasible with someone like him on there because he was never getting any minutes. I decided to change in game week 25 and have basically a full bench of 4 players that are all appearing. Gui effectively became Ekatike at that point. The reason why it all shifted because Bukayo Saka got injured. I had him in place because Arsenal were going to have the double. Saka was a key component of that. He ended up playing anyway, but he got injured ahead of game week 25, and his availability was unknown. So I reshuffled the finances. Gui became Ekatike, who looked secure for minutes, etc., etc. at that point, and Saka became James Garner, and there was another move. But the key component of this was I had 4 playing players on the bench. 3 DEFCON guys in game week 25. The 2 Everton guys, James Garner, James Tarkowski, they were away to Fulham that week. And Maxime Lacroix was away to Brighton that week. On paper, and with the Bravka in goal at home to West Ham. On paper, it's not an incredible bench boost. Say 3 DEFCON guys, so people with aspirations of getting a big DEFCON bench for a double game week. I had that just with a single game week group of players, all playing away, but a goalkeeper had a reasonable game. I ended up getting 18 points on that week's bench boost, mainly because Lacroix got 11 points in the 1-0 win over Brighton. But if you offer me 18 points on the bench boost, I'd gladly take it. I think sometimes it's easy to overcomplicate bench boosts, and it's actually quite rare to be in a position where, one, everyone on your bench is actually playing, which I had obviously in game week 25, and 2, the players there offer something. I say in the example of that, there were 3 DEFCON guys. There was a good chance that 2 of them was going to get DEFCON. Someone else might have nabbed something else. And in this case, Lacroix got an 11-pointer. Not overcomplicated. I didn't make those 3 moves in that week for the benefit of the bench boost, clearly, because I didn't activate the chip. But it was on. This is the second time this season, in the same season, this has happened to me. I had it in the first half of the year. I had numerous game weeks around game week 10 to 13, 14, where I had a perfectly playable bench boost. It wasn't optimal. There was 1 or 2 players on there who maybe look at the fixtures and think, I don't really like these, but it was a decent FPL pick. They had a reasonable fixture. I benched Malik Thiel, for example, in one of the weeks. Newcastle, I think, were away to Tottenham, and he scored 2 goals. At the time, he wasn't getting loads of DEFCON. Didn't look to have incredibly high attacking threat. He happened to get a 17-pointer that week. And the other 2 bench players with him were reasonable picks as well. Instead, what I tried to do was set myself up to a more optimal bench boost around in the first half of the season. That was around game week 17. In this half of the season, it was around game week 29. I felt like my subs in those weeks would be stronger than in this particular week. In both cases, it backfired. I had to sort of change path and do things a bit differently. there's a learning in this. I'd say this happened to me twice in one season. And definition of obviously not improving in the game is keep making the same mistakes over and over. I've had 2 experiences of this now in the same season where there's been a bench boost under my nose, which has been reasonable, not perfect, but reasonable. I haven't played it, and in both cases, it would have gone quite well. In this particular recent batch of games, game week 27 was also a reasonable bench boost. Not probably as good as the first time, because I had the Bravka here playing at Stamford Bridge away to Chelsea. But high upside pick here, Harry Wilson was on the bench away to Sunderland, ended up getting 8 points. And again, 2 Everton guys this time with a home fixture. You could argue this bench boost on paper was stronger than the first one because 2 DEFCON guys with home games, you'd probably put a higher percentage on Tarkowski keeping a clean sheet, more than either Tarkowski or Lacroix in game week 25. And I say I had an upside pick in Harry Wilson, who was capable of a bigger haul, probably more so than the first time round. This bench boost got 13 points. Again, not incredible, but I think if you offer me 13 points for the bench boost now as a general expectation, I don't think that's bad. So 2 chances, turned them both down, and now I've still stuck with it. So to make the point, I think moving forward, whether that's into the bench boost, if we still have it for this year, and certainly looking into future FPL seasons, I want to get into a habit here where if there's a bench boost available to me, and let's be fair, it's not 3 players playing away to Man City, Arsenal, and Liverpool or something. If the fixtures are reasonable, the picks I have are reasonable. That in both of these cases, it's DEFCON guys and high upside guys. It's not, as an example, a Burnley defender and a Wolves defender and an Everton mid with a hard game or something, like an upside Everton mid. There's opportunities here, and all of us, I think, to a point, eat up too much of our time thinking about optimal bench boosts, and very rarely does it work out. And it impacts future transfers. It impacts future chips like wildcards. It shouldn't do. Is it that powerful? Probably not. You have to be incredibly lucky, as in most things in FPL, particularly the bench boost. You have to be incredibly lucky to do well out of it. If it's available to be played, I think we just need to play it. So we move on from that. Obviously, that opportunity is now gone. But just for future, that's the mindset I want to get into. So let's look at these. I did this slide in the last time I potted about chips, game week 32, 33, 34. Bit more clarity now on what game week 33 might be because we've had an extra round of FA Cup results. I think the expectation is now we might get 6 teams doubling. So Chelsea are expected to beat Port Vale in the FA Cup. They would have a double, and so would their opponent in game week 34, who is Brighton. So doubles for Chelsea and Brighton. Arsenal expected to get through in the FA Cup against Championship opposition. Them and their opponents would double. Arsenal, Newcastle. So that's Arsenal, Newcastle, Chelsea, Brighton. And then Man City right now expected to beat Liverpool based on bookmaker odds. So Man City and Burnley would be expected to double at the moment. So same problems I feared the last time round. If we're going to bench boost into 15 doublers in game week 33, where do the budget options come from there? We're not going to want 3 Burnley players. Is it possible to afford 15 doublers from Arsenal, Newcastle, Chelsea, Man City and Brighton? Maybe it is. Brighton not necessarily optimal though. Decent game away to Tottenham, I guess. And then the second game will be at home to Chelsea. It's not the worst, but you're relying on Brighton basically for your enablers if you want game week players. It's unlikely here we're going to get what could have happened earlier on, the likes of Sunderland, Nottingham Forest, maybe Leeds. I think Leeds could still double, but it's not expected. If they beat West Ham in the FA Cup, obviously it's possible their game week 34 fixture with Bournemouth could be moved into 33, but with neither team in Europe, I think there's a possibility it could stay in 34 and move into the midweek instead. So that's an unknown. It could still fall nicely for those on this plan, but I think the projections are at the moment it's unlikely. So hard in game week 33, I think, to afford enabling double game week players. And also your wild card in game week 32 to bring those players in wouldn't look great. Man City have got Chelsea, for example. That was my big fear the first time round. How many players do we really want in that fixture in 32. Owning Arsenal is not so bad against Newcastle. Against Bournemouth. Owning Newcastle is fine, but not incredible away to Crystal Palace. And Brighton, again, obviously quite good away to Burnley. So the Wildcard 32, bench boost 33 plan is fine for Arsenal and Brighton. Average, I guess, at best for Newcastle. Not particularly good for Chelsea and Man City. Then what happens in game week 32 when Man United are at home to Leeds, maybe Liverpool are at home to Fulham, any other games there you like the look of that you think, I wouldn't mind attacking this. You can't have players from those teams because you prioritise Chelsea and Man City. So my point still stands from the first pod round. I don't really want to use a chip in game week 32. My team now is quite well balanced with Liverpool players. I've got Bruno Fernandes. I've got some Brentford players. My team in game week 32 looks reasonable. And I think will look better than what the wildcard 32 team will look like that's trying to cram in more Chelsea and Man City players, for example. So I don't really want to use a chip in game week 32. Wildcard certainly in game week 32, which then means I'm not going to set up that bench boost in game week 33. So for me at the moment, there's two pathways. I think it's 33 and 34 seem the logical chip weeks. One of them is going to be a free hit for me, and one of them is going to be a wild card for me. It's just a case of which way round. Do I want to play the free hit in 33 and really load up on the best 11 doublers? And it may be affordable to own more premiums because all your money's going into the starting 11. Absolute awful bench you can have, but get the most money as possible into your team. Then obviously game week 34 is the wild card, which isn't so bad. But then that wild card is probably not going to have any Arsenal players because they'll blank, not any Chelsea players because they'll blank. Maybe some Man City as well. So I'm going to jump on the screen here, and this is the reason for it, because that plan, which is the way I thought I wanted to play the game, now doesn't look very good. Because let's say we go ahead with that, and we play the free hit in 33, which is my want, because I think it's the biggest upside of the free hit is to play it in a double game week. So in an ideal, would I want to do that? I could wildcard in 34, but that wildcard is probably not going to include Arsenal players. They blank or expected to blank. Not going to include Chelsea players. They're expected to blank. Not going to include Man City players. They're expected to blank. Also, if you look at the runnings here, Newcastle and Brighton have it quite good. I think it's fair to say between game week 35 and game week 38, these are in alphabetical order. I haven't put all the teams in, but these are the teams under consideration. I think the teams you're going to be focused on are those 5 that double in game week 33, plus Leeds, plus Wolves. They're probably the 7 best teams. So to then wildcard in game week 34 and miss most of those teams because they're going to be blanking in game week 34 doesn't seem logical to me now. The plan loosely was to have 5 free transfers in game week 35 and then bring them all back in. I have 5 transfers to bring back the Arsenal players, the Man City players, the Chelsea players, etc. But even then, I'm still not going to have an optimal team at the end. So I'm hesitant to do that. What I also want to throw in here is game week 35, I think, is a really strong bench boost week. If you look at, we know who the cheap assets are in the game at the moment. And we know what teams they play for. So if you look at some of them here in game week 35, we've got James Hill at Bournemouth that's got a home game with Crystal Palace. Fine for a bench boost. We've got Leeds. We've got Goodmanson, Rodon, very cheap defenders. Kyle Darlow's playing right now in goal, cheap goalkeeper. Anton Stach, arguably the best absolute budget mid, about 4.7. And Dominic Calvert-Lewin's not crazy budget, but also not expensive. Leeds have got Burnley at home in game week 35. So a triple up on Leeds for that week and they're running seems more than fair. I'd be quite happy to have 3 Leeds players between 35 and 38 for Burnley at home, Tottenham away, Brighton at home, West Ham away. Something like Goodmanson as a 3.8 playing defender, Stach as a 4.7 playing mid, and Calvert-Lewin up front makes perfect sense to me. You look at Sunderland, we know they've got cheap assets, Enzo Lefebvre, Omar Alderate, all these guys, they're away to Wolves in game week 35. And then Wolves themselves improving. Jose Sarr, obviously, in goals, quite cheap. Rodrigo Gomez, a defender, potentially playing in midfield, quite cheap. Obviously, Mane up front, very cheap as well. Sunderland at home in game week 35. So my fear, and why I was so keen before to play the bench boost before the wild card, was that I really wanted maximum budget in my 11 and a weak bench. I think for anyone looking to wildcard 32 into bench boost 33, you're going to end up spending a lot of money on a squad of 15. There's not going to be many super cheap budget enablers in that position. Ideally, if I'd have played the bench boost already, when it came to my wild card, I'd be quite happy to have a bench of arguably a non-playing goalkeeper who costs 3.8. Goodmanson as a 3.8 defender, maybe even Worrell at Burnley, 3.8 defender, and Mark Gui is like a 4.1, 4.2 striker. Because you put all the money in the 11, Goodmanson and Worrell are there if you get absolutely desperate and you need players off the bench. At this point of the season, with this few game weeks to go, especially if we're wildcarding even later than where we are now, do we really need 4 playing subs? We want to get as much money as we can into the team. Goodmanson and Worrell at super cheap prices give you some emergency backup if you need it. For those wildcarding 32, bench boost 33, if you look at those 4 players, a 3.8 keeper, a 4.2 striker, that's a combined 8 million, and 2 other 3.8 defenders, you're roughly spending about 16 million on the 4 bench spots. I would challenge anyone, I think, that's likely to wildcard 32 to bench boost 33 to keep their 4 weakest players probably below 20 million. You're going to end up, at the moment, I say Brighton offer maybe some opportunities. So maybe Verbruggen and Van Hecke go in. Maybe there's a midfielder who's around 5 million who's an option. I don't know. But realistically, you're going to be spending, I think, about 20 million on your 4 worst players. Maybe a little bit less, but certainly not 16 million. So I think that's a waste of like 3-4 million of budget, literally just for the benefit of the bench boost. Is it really worth it? I think if you look at game week 35, it's plausible here to put Jose Sarr as your backup keeper at 4.2. Goodmanson still works as a 3.8 defender. I think someone like James Hill works as a 4 million defender. And then Anton Stach works as a 4.7 million mid. They're your 4 bench players. So you've spent there maybe 17 million. I think I can live with that. It's not ideal still for me to take $1 million out of my best 11 to beef up the bench. But I think ideally I'd wanted to spend 16 on those 4 spots. I think with the fixtures, the way they're falling in game week 35, you can spend 17 roundabout and do quite well. Whereas if you play 32, 33, that bench is going to cost you 19. That's a lot of money. That's like 1 less premium in your actual best 11. Is it worth it for the bench boost? So the way these fixtures are falling now has tempted me to think game week 35 bench boost here kind of works. And I think I'm heading now down the path that if I wildcard in 33, I can put the 3 Leeds players on the bench. The expectation is right now they'll have a single game week, but I can live with that to loosely put Goodmanson, Stach, Calvert-Lewin on the bench for that week with Jose Sarr, and then have 11 doublers or maybe 10 doublers and Bruno Fernandes or something like that. And those doublers, you'd have probably triple Arsenal, you'll have triple Man City, you probably have 2 maybe from Chelsea, 2 maybe from Newcastle, and maybe Bruno Fernandes or something, or Brighton. So you play that in 33 on the wild card, you have, I say, 11 doublers. 34 your free hit, and obviously there's quite a lot of blank game weeks potentially here, but you can have your Liverpool, you can maybe have your Man United, maybe a sprinkling of Sunderland, Fulham, these sort of teams with decent home games. And in 35, when you get that wild card team back, you've got triple Arsenal at home to Fulham. You've got triple Man City away to Everton, not too bad. Your triple Leeds come in at home to Burnley. And then you've still got how many transfers you brought through to correct a few other things. If you keep your Newcastle guys there at home to Brighton, not too bad. I'd be quite keen, I think, to bring in Morgan Rogers in game week 35. But let's say, as a hypothetical example, you own Bruno Guimaraes on your wild card for the double in 33. He can become Morgan Rogers in game week 35 for Tottenham at home, Burnley away. That's one transfer you could use. I think this sets you up better. The question from there, I think, then becomes, how many transfers do you need in game week 35 to fix things, to set up the bench boost, or to set up the end of the, I won't use the phrase just set up the bench boost, but set up the final run. I think you want to bring Morgan Rogers in as an example in 35. If you go a bit mad on Brighton on your wild card in 33, you'll probably want to move them on. They're away to Newcastle in 35. Not ideal for a bench boost, but they do have Wolves at home in 36, so decision to make there. I think you certainly would need two. I think you'd want 2 free transfers in game week 35. You might ideally want 3 to be on the safe side in game week 35. Bearing in mind you get one in game week 35, I think you need to roll 2 through. This is my decision for now, if I follow through with this plan. So I've changed my 2 chips around. Now I'm looking at wildcard 33, free hit 34, where previously I was looking the reverse of that. But the way the fixtures are at the end and the way these doubles have fallen, I think makes this pass stronger. My plan loosely was to roll up until game week 32. This squad I've got, which is on the right now, is fine. The team this week's not awful. I've got 11 players for game week 31. The squad in game week 32 is fine. I don't need to make any transfers here. And if I didn't make any transfers, I'd have 5 free transfers in game week 35. But looking at that running, if I've already got Arsenal players, Man City players, Chelsea players, etc., carrying over from my wild card, not that I can't use 5 free transfers, but you're making transfers almost for the sake of it. I've now probably got an opportunity based on this change of direction that I can maybe make a couple of transfers now. I've got 2 free transfers this week in game week 30. As I said, I think you want 3 in game week 35. So I'll have that one. I need to roll 2 through. So if I make 2 this week, roll in 31, roll in 32, I'll be there. So I've got an option here to make 2 free transfers, I think, this week. What do I do? Based on my learnings and what I touched on at the start of this pod, there's a bench boost opportunity right under my nose here. I've got a full playing squad. Assuming Harry Wilson is past fit, I think the latest expectation is that he will be fit. Joachim Andersen, I think, will start again. A little bit of trust needed, particularly on Haaland. But everyone else, I think, is fine. I've got 2 free transfers. Could I improve 2 things here? The logical 2 moves would be to move the 2 Everton guys out. Fixture this week, obviously not good, away to Arsenal. They've got Chelsea at home next week in 31. They're playing, but again, you probably could do better. Then they've got Brentford away in 32. Again, they're playing, but you probably could do better. I don't desperately need the Everton players for either of the next 3, for any of the next 3 weeks. So I could move them on. Part of the issue with that is, though, particularly in the case of Tarkowski, there's not really a defender at the moment I'm desperate to own who I don't have. I could move him on to a Brentford defender. And Brentford's fixtures are better, but am I really looking at Tarkowski to Vandenberg as a good transfer here? Probably not. So that limits me a little bit. I think Garner to Elliot Anderson is a bit sideways as well, but at least Nottingham Forest fixtures for the next 3 weeks are a lot better than Everton, so the ceiling's higher. I've got an option, obviously, to move the goalkeeper. I have to play Dubravka in game week 31 because Raya blanks. So if I made a Dubravka transfer to anyone, I'd play that goalkeeper in 2 of the next 3 weeks. You could argue it's justified. Dubravka's fixture this week is not too bad, at least. Or do I move Haaland to João Pedro? I've got Ekitike. I think a lot of people will be looking at Haaland to Ekitike. Haaland, we're not sure about his minutes this week. Obviously, got the second leg with Real Madrid to, I'll use the word loosely, prioritise at the moment. I don't know what game Man City will feel is the most important. But Pedro, I think, at home to Newcastle this week is just as good as Haaland away to West Ham. Chelsea got the best XG in the league over the last 6 weeks. I think Newcastle got the 3rd worst XGC. So, at least from a data perspective, a Chelsea reasonably comfortable home win looks the most likely outcome of that game. So I'd quite happily sacrifice Haaland for João Pedro. That puts a lot of money in my bank to then move Garner on. That could be my 2 free transfers. Garner could become Florian Wirtz, and I really attack that Liverpool fixture against Tottenham, thinking that could be a bit of a bloodbath there based on Tottenham's recent performances and how their injury concerns in defence. Van der Ven suspended. Romero went off with head injury. Will he suffer from concussion or something and be out of this game? I don't know. Paulini, the same, who's filled in at the back sometimes. That Tottenham defence could be in chaos, and triple Liverpool attack could be very good. So I could move Garner to Florian Wirtz, Cody Gakpo, Szoboszlai, someone like that. Man United have got a decent fixture here. Villa obviously played yesterday in Europe, so coming back from, I don't know, from France, but they've played a midweek game. Man United haven't. Villa's league form not particularly great right now. Villa struggling in the league. I don't hate the thought of having another Man United midfielder. Mbeumo could work. Obviously has Leeds at home as well, 32, so that would strengthen my team for that. Plays as well Bournemouth next week. Not too bad. So Mbeumo's an option from Ghana if I sold Haaland. Wirtz, Gakpo options. Or the Forest guys. Say Elliot Anderson. Even Morgan Gibbs-White, probably a bit under the radar here. Really good next 3 or 4 weeks of fixtures. 3 home games and an away game with Tottenham. I did some analysis yesterday looking at various midfielder stats in the league across the last 6 game weeks. Morgan Gibbs-White is top for shots in the last 6 game weeks. He's second to Mo Salah for shots in the box. And he's second to Cole Palmer for shots on target. Obviously, Palmer's had some penalties in there, which contribute towards shot on target. So for 3 quite important metrics for a midfielder that you're looking to score goals, someone that's willing to shoot, someone that's having shots in the box, which you would expect to be sort of higher XG, and for someone that's hitting the target with their shots, Morgan Gibbs-White is very prominent in all 3 metrics. 4% owned could be a nice differential if you're looking to sort of chase rank here and take the odd punt with something. I don't hate him for this run. Whether he's better than Mbeumo or better than Wirtz is obviously a different discussion. But I'm open-minded here to use my 2 free transfers to do Haaland to Pedro and upgrade James Garner. I've still got the option then to bench boost the same 4 players I've got here. It's not the best again, but is this much different to what I had in game week 25 when I turned the bench boost down and Lacroix got a surprising 11 points? Is it unreasonable here that Joachim Andersen keeps a clean sheet? No. Is it unreasonable here Morgan Rogers decides to score some more low XG shots? Hasn't got many points for a while, but we know he's a bit streaky. It's quite nice, I think, when you play the bench boost to have someone who's at least a higher ceiling player on there. Morgan Rogers in any given game week could pull out a 17-pointer with a sort of 2 goals and an assist or something. Not unreasonable it happens this week. So, yeah, there's my current thoughts. It's priority 1 is, do I want to get the bench boost played? And I think priority 2 is, I think I should use my 2 free transfers because I'm not going to need 5, I don't think, now in game week 35. The earlier I use my free transfers now, the more use I'm getting out of them because I'm going to, say, play the wild card, I think, now in game week 33. So I've only got 3 weeks, 30, 31, 32, to sort of gain from the transfers. I'd rather use them now rather than in 31 or 32 when you obviously got less time to gain. So, yeah, my options say really to move the 2 Everton guys on. Do I move to Bravka on? Or do I do something involving Haaland and Pedro, which doing Haaland to Pedro obviously strengthens my team for 2 or for next week, really. This week, I don't think I lose out. Next week, definitely stronger. And frees up the important budget that would allow me a significant Garner upgrade up to sort of the Mbeumo price point, Wirtz price point. I could go higher if I wanted to, but I don't need to. So that's what I'm looking at. I think Haaland and Garner out. Pedro in, undecided right now between Mbeumo, Wirtz and Gibbs-White. I think it'd be one of those 3. If you've got a strong thought, appreciate being left in the comments. But yeah, do that. Wildcard then in game week 33 into realistically 11 doublers with triple leads on the bench. Free hit the 34, which is probably going to be quite a lot, maybe even 11 changes from the wildcard 33 setup. And that wildcard 33 team seems to set me up quite nicely from 35 to 38. Based on current plans in 35, I'd have 3 free transfers to tinker around the edges to maybe strengthen the bench boost slightly, maybe look ahead. Say in game week 36 here, Chelsea are away to Liverpool. Is there a sort of hop on, hop off points here from your Chelsea players? Do you want them all the way through? Do you play them against Forest, sell them against Liverpool, buy them back against Tottenham? Oh, if you've got enough free transfers, these little 1 week shuffles become possible. So yeah, I think that's it for this one. This is my sort of updated chip plan. Some thoughts around the bench boost, but I'm not keen on in game week 33. I don't think there's going to be enough enablers. I think it will cost you too much to have a valid bench. Not a good use of funds. Those fixtures in 35, particularly involving Leeds at home to Burnley, Sunderland and Wolves playing each other. Wolves at home there. Bournemouth having a home game. Particularly those teams. I think there's so many good assets that are cheap assets from those teams that you can have like 4 bench players costing sort of 17 million and all having home games, all having decent games on paper. The only sort of caveat to that for me is I'm not learning from my lessons. I've got a bench boost I could play now. This has gone wrong twice already this year, and I'm setting myself up to be put in that same position again, where I'm thinking 3-4 weeks ahead, or in this case, was it 5 weeks ahead? A lot can go wrong, but at least I've had 3 free transfers to tidy things up at that point. So good luck everyone for this week. Obviously, have an eye on how you're going to play your chips now. We've got a lot more information in the last week. More to come between the 31 and 32 deadline. Still not sure where all the doubles are going to go, who's doubling, etc. But I think we do have to start making better plans now. It's good to stay flexible. It's good to leave your options open and keep different pathways open. But I think we are getting near the point now we have to commit to something. And say, looking at the way these fixtures have fallen, I think 33, 35, 36, 37 are all good for the same batch of teams. Do we really need to wildcard them in 32 to bench boost 33? I think we can wildcard them in 33 and bench boost them in 35. I think the points difference is minimal from doing that, and you're probably way better off in 32. So, yeah, thanks for listening. If you're new around here, appreciate a subscription. Hopefully get up near 1,000 before the end of the year, we all hope. And so if you've got any thoughts, leave some comments. But until next time, speak to you all soon. Cheers. We'll do this.